Welcome to the Good Homegirl. I'm your Good Homegirl Tay, and on this podcast we talk about motherhood, current events, real life, healing, and whatever else is on my mind while making sure you yourself feel seen and heard. Today's topic is heavy, but it's necessary. Releasing a toxic and abusive mother. If you struggle with the idea of letting go, feeling guilty, or just needing validation that it's okay to protect your peace, this episode is for you. So grab your tea, your journal, or just take a deep breath because we're about to get into it. So before I actually get deep into the episode, I wanted to give you guys a quick story time. So you guys know that I've talked about this for a while. It's the topic of a few of my episodes, right? And if you follow me on YouTube, the topic of a few of my videos as well. When I was about almost 6.5, I went to go live with my father. So I was raised by my dad. I grew up with my dad. My dad had sole custody of me. But before that, obviously was living with my mother. And so I never really thought that I'd completely tell this story or the really formative moments that I do remember, but I feel like it's necessary for this particular episode. So when I was younger, I do remember my mom being around. I do remember, my mom. One of the things that I remember mostly was the way that she used to show me and my sister off. So she used to always say that she wanted two girls. So she wanted two girls, she got two girls because she just loved little girls. So she very much always dressed us really cute. We always had those pretty dresses, like the Easter Sunday dresses from Robinson's May and Dillard's and Macy's and stuff like that. Our hair was always done. When we were old enough to be in the nail shop, we were in the nail shop. That's one thing that she definitely gave us both was the gift of always wanting to look nice, right? So I can remember as a little girl, one of the things that was always traumatic for me was she was very abusive towards my grandmother. So we lived in my grandmother's home, and every time they had a disagreement or my granny spoke up about something in her own house, my mother, I don't remember the entire thing, but I always remember it would always be them arguing, and my granny would literally be running out of her house, sprinting out the door. Another thing that I can recall was me and my sister were left at home alone a lot. Now, her version of it is that, the neighbors were supposed to look after us or what have you, but that's what she says, but from my view, that's never what happened. We were always there by ourselves. I'm talking about as early as about 5. So me and my sister are 4 years apart. So imagine a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old in a house by themselves. I always tell you guys that my children are each at a formative age or an age where, for myself, each individual age that they are right now was a traumatic age for me. So when I think about being left at home alone, I have my second to the youngest is 6. And I could not imagine leaving him in here with his sister. And my baby girl will be 5 next month. But even still, I can't picture leaving them 2 in the house by themselves for any reason. Especially overnight and things like that. So I remember I ended up telling my dad about it. I think I went to, because I don't know the rift between my parents. My dad says that my mom wouldn't let him see me. My mom says that my dad didn't care until she set the boundary. I'm not exactly sure, but I do remember that I would go to my grandmother's a lot. And so I remember telling my grandmother what was going on, and my grandmother just made sure that I remembered her number and was like, hey, if this happens again, you make sure that you call me. If you're scared, you make sure you call me. I said, okay. So one day, me and my sister are at home alone. And I can't exactly remember what happened, but I did pick up the phone and I called my grandmother and I told my grandmother that I was scared. And my grandmother was like, hold on, let me tell your dad. I guess my dad was over there. So my dad gets on the phone. He's like, what's going on? I tell him what's going on. He's like, I'm on my way. So immediately I'm spooked. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. And so my dad calls the police, tells the police like my daughter's in there by herself, whatever. And I do remember that the neighbors eventually came out, and the neighbors told the police like, oh, we'll take them and we'll just let, we didn't know, yada, 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 but we'll let the mom know XYZ. So the reason why I tell you guys that, like, when my mom says that, oh, the neighbors were supposed to be watching you, it's always a little hazy for me, because when the police showed up, the neighbors were like, we didn't even know they were there by themselves. So, after that was kind of like what catapulted my dad into, my mom and dad's custody battle, and my dad fighting for custody of me, what have you. And so, once my father got full custody of me, then I was only seeing my mom when my father saw fit, because my dad had sole custody. So there was no joint legal, no full physical, no nothing. There was just like, this is solely my father's, I was solely my father's child and responsibility until I was 18. My mother had lost all of her parental rights when it came to me, and my baby sister, or my little sister, went into foster care. During this time, from my view, right, because I'm not my mom, I don't live in my mother's body. According to her and her account of events, things were different. But for me, one of the things that I always noticed was she never made herself available to me. So I believe because I was being left at home alone, that the court had ordered monitored visits. There was a facility that we used to have to go to where my dad would have to like meet her there. And every single time my dad would pull up, she was not there. And when I say every single time, every single time. After all of this stuff cracked off, I think the first time I seen my mom after that, I was 9. And I remember I have two major memories, because I am still working through certain things, and when I've dumped a lot of traumatic events from my childhood. And so in my healing, they're starting to slowly come back up. One, I remember going shopping with her, and I begged for these white, black, and red Jordan 13s, and my granny was like, well, she wants them, so we'll buy them. I remember that. I don't remember the rest of that day, but I just remember those because those are my favorite as far as shoes go. Why are you looking at me like that? Y'all know I have a dog, so he just popped his head up in a very concerning manner. I thought he heard something, I didn't. But yeah, so I remember that, and then I remember I had a cheer competition, and she showed up to that for a few moments. So those are the two memories from that. I did not start going to see her for like long periods of time until I was maybe about 10 or 11. Now, during this time, I remember a few things. I do remember that we always went shopping, and I do remember that I spent a lot of time at my auntie's house. So from my preteen years all the way into my teenage years, I'm talking about until I was 17 years old and then decided to move back home to LA, I was always at my auntie's house. I can remember my family members telling her like, hey, she's out here. I can remember myself calling and asking to spend time with her. She never seemed to have time for me. She was always busy with something. Whether it was going to bingo, whether it was a party she had to go to, she was always busy. So for me, I realized that one of the grievances that I have with her that I am still actively working through is that when your children were removed from your home, you did not, from what I saw, you did not fight to get us back. Instead, you went and lived your best life. My little sister went into foster care when she was 4. She did not graduate out of foster care until she was 15. She went back into foster care when she was like 15 and a half, 16. And that's where she graduated from as a ward of the state. I remember, even when I came back home, we were not a priority. We were just there. There was a point in time where there was an apartment that we lived in, and she decided she didn't want to live in that apartment anymore. And she told myself, which was 19, and my sister, who was 15, that she was moving and that we would not be coming with her. And then I also remember when she did get another place, that my auntie asked her, are you gonna have the girls come back? And she was like, I don't want them living with me. So There's a bunch of other things, but I'm still dealing with something recently. So I'm trying to work through my emotions to get through this episode. And I know that story time is a little long, so I apologize. Recently, we had a disagreement in regards to my grandmother. And my mother is very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive. And she's actually very narcissistic. And so anytime that you disagree with her, she sees that as betrayal. And when she feels like she does not agree with you, or she doesn't agree with your argument, she will tell you that it is stupid. She will call you out of your name, and she will threaten physical harm. And that is where we are today. So with that anecdote, I am letting you all know that if this has been your situation or anything of the sort, you are not wrong. You are not crazy. You do not owe them anything. We have to come sometimes to the realization that the parents that God gave us biologically were literally just here to get us here. That was their purpose. And so for myself, I no longer refer to my mother as my mother. I refer to my mother either by her name or as my birth giver. Because thank you for not aborting me. However, you played a large role in a lot of the things that have happened in my life. And you guys know that I speak a lot on, the things that I had to unlearn due to her. So, when did this happen? This happened, I believe, on Friday. And so I just made an executive decision that I no longer wish to have her as a part of my life. As of now, and it's very like a pending. I know that you guys can hear that in my voice, but as of now, I have not taken my children from her. My children do love their grandmother, but I have told myself that if I see any signs of, abuse or anything that I saw from my childhood, if I see those things happening when it comes to my children, she will be removed from their lives as well. But as of right now, my issue personally is her. And she has been using my children's father to try to contact me. So she doesn't send messages per se, but she'll ask him things where she knows that he doesn't know, so he has to come and ask me, just so he could be like, oh, your mom asked, da 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 da. And then when we had the disagreement the other day, she got verbally abusive and I blocked her. And so she immediately went to texting him, trashing me and cussing me out through him. So, that's a lot. I know. I apologize. I want to get into how we acknowledge this pain. So, first things first, let's acknowledge the hurt. Your mother is supposed to be a safe space, your first source of love and protection. But what happens when she's the one causing the most pain? Whether it's emotional, verbal, physical, or even financial abuse, growing up with a toxic mother can leave deep wounds. And I want to say this loud and clear. Your pain is valid. I'm going to say that to you again. Your pain is valid. You do not have to minimize what you went through just because she's your mother. And this is something that I've been working with myself on. I understand, and I'm going to validate this for you right now. I understand that every little girl wants their mother. But we do not have to sacrifice ourselves and our feelings for the sake of having one around. None of us deserve to be abused. None of us have deserved to be neglected. None of us have deserved to have that parent that tries to vicariously live through us and then degrade us when we don't do things in the way that they see fit, because I dealt with that as well. I dealt with a lot of my accomplishments being negated when it wasn't something that she wanted me to do. That's not on you. That is not on you at all. I do not subscribe to that's your such and such, because you can flip that and be like, yeah, well, I'm her such and such too. I'm a mother of 4. I can acknowledge that she is still a human being outside of being my mother, and she probably has her own pain and traumas to work through. But I'm also validating for myself and my inner child that it is not my problem nor my responsibility that she chooses to act the way that she acts due to either her just being herself or her not working through her own unhealed traumas. One of the hardest parts of this journey is the guilt. Society tells us that mothers are sacred, that we owe them endless grace no matter what. But let me ask you this. Would you keep a friend around you if they talked down to you, manipulated you, or made you feel worthless? Family titles do not justify abuse. And if you're breaking this cycle for your future children or for yourself, or just for your peace, you're doing something incredibly brave. I want you to reflect on how guilt has played a role in their decision making. Because this is something that I've gone through. I can give you something small. Like we had one of my babies had a birthday party. I talked about this in another episode, but one of my babies had a birthday party. And my mother wanted the baby to have a cake. And we always spent like $300 on one of those really extravagant birthday cakes. But no one ever ate it because the cake was so pretty. No one wanted to eat the cake. And so you end up cutting up this cake and freezing it. And my family doesn't eat a whole lot of cake like that anyway. So we're planning the party and she asked me, what are you going to do about cake? And I said, we're going to get cake and cake pops. I mean, not cake. I'm sorry. We're going to get cake pops and cookies and cupcakes. That's what it was. And she was like, you're not going to get a cake? And I said, no. And I explained to her, no, because, we spend this much money on a cake. It never gets eaten up. It's just a waste of money and resources. And she was like, okay. She was like, well, I think I want a cake. And I was just like, okay, well, we're not doing that. So we get closer to the baby's party. And she calls me and she has this friend that had a friend that was like a millionaire, and the lady would just throw money around. So she was like, well, such and such said she wants a cake. So she said she's going to buy a cake for his party. And I'm just like, no, that's not what I want. And she was like, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I'm serious. I told you I did not want a cake for his birthday. And I literally had to tell her, listen, if you guys bring a cake to this baby's party, I will literally knock it over. And she was just like, oh, so my opinion doesn't matter. I just spend the money. And I was like, excuse you? You heard what I said. And the funny part about it is she, every single time she has helped me plan one of the kids' birthday parties, it's my debit card that I give to her. Not that it matters, but I pay for my kids' stuff. Anything that she does outside of that is voluntary. So what we're not going to do is sit here and act as though all of a sudden, all of these things are getting paid for out of your pocket just because you're not getting your way. So it's little things like that. And it's taken me a really long time to really truly understand the ways in which she's done this. I'm a Gemini. I keep receipts. I have receipts in my Dropbox and I'm looking back, and this is like how she would talk to 23-year-old me. So this was over 10 years ago now. I'll be 35 this year. And I'm looking back and I'm like, oh my God, she's been gaslighting me this entire time. She lived with us at one point. I'll never forget, my baby dropped some goldfish on the floor. And I was in cosmetology school at the time, and one of the things that they're big on is punctuality. So I was like, you know what, I'll sweep them up when I get back. She sends me this long, crazy, berating text message about how I let my son eat off the floor and I treat her like a maid, and I left that stuff there just because I assumed that she was going to clean it up. And I was just like, no, actually, I was late. I was going to come back to it. And she just kept going and kept going and kept going because she wasn't getting the response that she wanted. And then at some point when she realizes that she's not winning, and I'm using air quotes, she's not winning the argument, she tells me my friends told me that you would do this to me. And I was just like, what? You? And y'all, while she lived in my house, she was so abusive. She was verbally abusive. She did not respect any of my boundaries. She did not respect my house. She smoked cigarettes. I would ask her not to smoke cigarettes in my house. And y'all know, those of us that are non-smokers can smell the smoke. I don't give a damn if it's 12 hours old. And I'll never forget, I came home from work one day on my lunch break, and she's in the shower, and I'm smelling big Newports. So I'm here to let you know that no, you're not crazy, and it's a lot harder for us to address because of who the person is to us. And I really would encourage you to release the need for that title. Yes, that is your mother by birth, right? But that doesn't mean that they are God. They're not God. They're human beings just like you and I. For some, setting boundaries might be an option. Limiting phone calls, keeping visits short, or refusing to engage in toxic conversations. I want y'all to know that I tried that. It really depends. You have to know who you're dealing with. I feel like when I was doing that, I was walking on eggshells, and I feel like the blow up was going to happen regardless. But for others, walking away completely is the only way to truly heal. And that is where I am at now. And if that's you, I need you to know choosing peace is not selfish. Cutting off toxicity does not make you a bad daughter, son, or person. It makes you someone who values their mental and emotional well-being. For myself, what I used to do is, one of the things that she would do with me would be like to ask me if my kids needed something. And that wasn't a problem. Like, I was cool with that. But there was a disagreement that we had one time. I spoke on this, I don't remember how many episodes or videos ago, but there was a situation where I had borrowed some money from her, and I had told her I was going to give the money back at a certain date, and I had paid the majority of it, and then I owed her a balance. And she pretty much chewed me for filth. And I also understood that she cannot talk to my sister that same way because my sister just strictly doesn't allow it. My sister's not as respectful either, but so everything that she wanted to say to me and everybody else, or my sister and everybody else, she had put out on me. I rarely ask her for anything. I rarely ask her for help. It literally has to be like the sky is literally falling on my head. And so I remember telling her, I take full accountability. I definitely should have said something sooner. Here's what I did with the money, whatever. Because when she asked for it back and she started doing what she was doing, I sent her what I had. I think I had like $40. So let's say I owed her $80. I sent her like $45. And I was like, this is all I have. I have a client tomorrow. I'll send you the rest tomorrow. Chewed me all the way out. And so she ended up the next day telling me like, hey, I just called to let you know that, I don't want you with no money. And if this was for my grandkids, I'll whatever. But I had already made up in my mind, like, I just would never ask her for anything. And this is why I don't ask. Because even when I told her that, she didn't have to speak to me in such a manner, she tried to justify the disrespect instead of saying, you know what, my bad, I was angry. And so from that point, and this was back in August, from that point, I just told myself, like, I don't care what is going on. If ever she asks me if I need anything, the answer is going to always be no. And so that's what I do, is I would just tell her no. I started limiting phone calls. I wasn't answering every single phone call. I only reached out to her when it was important and it was something going on with the kids or my grandmother. And it's crazy because even like this recent blow up, like I told y'all, was about the grandmother. So it's totally up to you. Like I said, myself, my children are all at an age where they have working phones. So she doesn't need me to get in contact with them. I also told their father that, if you care to talk to her, that's your business. But if she becomes abusive to you, I definitely would recommend that you block her because it's only a matter of time. So let's get into healing and moving forward. So you've made the choice to release her. Now what? Healing is a process, and some days will be harder than others. Therapy, journaling, prayer, affirmations, whatever helps you process the grief, do that. And yes, it is grief. You're not just letting go of a toxic person. You're grieving the mother you deserved but never had. I want you guys, when you do begin to miss that person or that relationship, because we know those of us that have dealt with, any kind of traumas or toxic relationships, you do still mourn those relationships, right? When those feelings come up, I want you to affirm yourself. And that could be you telling yourself and reminding yourself, I deserve love that doesn't hurt. Because I've talked about it in so many other episodes and videos on my channel, that I was looking for her in everybody. I was looking for her acceptance in everybody. And that is what has caused me in my adult years the most grief. I've literally been dating my mother in forms of different people. Or I've literally had friendships with my mom in forms of other people. So remind yourself that you deserve a love that does not hurt. Also remind yourself that your healing matters, no matter what that looks like for you. I will say that if it's that important to you and you feel like you should tell your mother how she's hurting you, if you want to try that, I fully support that. I myself have been trying to do that since I was a little girl. And before my 35th birthday, my gift to myself is validating those feelings and understanding that her job was to bring me here. And for that, I am grateful. But I no longer wish to have a relationship with her because a relationship with her is an abusive one. And I don't deserve that. I don't want my kids to have it. I don't want my kids to think that it's okay. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. When this happened, I blocked her on everything and I didn't feel away. I just sent a message out to the kid's dad and was just like, hey, so this is what's going on. If you choose to deal with her, your business. But as far as I am concerned, I have fully released her from my life indefinitely. If no one has told you today, I see you. I see you. I hear you. You are not alone. Healing is messy, but on the other side of this pain is freedom. And you deserve that. So thank you for tuning in today. If this episode resonated with you, I would really appreciate if you would share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to take care of yourself. If you want to tell your story, please feel free to leave your story in the comments. You can also find me on all socials under the same name. You're more than welcome to reach out to me, DM me, what have you. You can also do the same thing about any other topics. You are not by yourself. You definitely have a friend and a sister in me. That is what this entire, I don't even know what to call this, what I'm doing. But that is what my content is about, is making all of you all, to the best of my ability, feel seen and let you know that you're not a unicorn. What you're going through, we've all gone through in some capacity. So until next time, I appreciate you all. I'm sending you all so much love and keep protecting your peace.